Welcome to our deep dive into graphic design. Looks like you've chosen a YouTube course from Envato Tuts Plus as your source material.
Smart choice.
It's packed with info, so we're going to pull out the most important stuff.
Think of it as your graphic design cheat sheet.
Exactly.
We'll break down the history,
Yeah.
the core principles,
Okay.
color theory, and even how technology's changing things.
Yeah.
By the end, you'll have a good grasp of the field.
Even if you've never designed a thing.
Precisely.
All right, so let's kick things off
Okay.
with a little history lesson. Graphic design history. And get this, it goes all the way back to cave paintings,
Wow.
38,000 BC. It really shows you how visual communication, it's just part of being human.
I think what's fascinating is those cave paintings weren't just about, making things look pretty.
Right.
They were probably a way to communicate, tell stories, much like, written language, which the Sumerians developed like around 3000 BC
Okay.
for practical stuff, record keeping,
That's right.
trade.
Okay. Now here's a fact that'll surprise you. China had a printing press with movable type
Really?
centuries before Gutenberg. We're talking 1040 AD. In Beijing, they were using porcelain. Imagine if that technology had spread sooner.
That's incredible. But the Gutenberg press in 15th century Europe, that was huge.
Yeah.
It totally changed communication, mass production of books. And it really set the stage for design and commerce. Amazing how one invention can have such a ripple effect.
Absolutely. So we've got this long history, but what makes design work? What makes it effective? And that's where design principles come in.
Exactly. They're like the building blocks of visual communication.
Yeah.
And they help make designs that are, well, both visually appealing and good at getting a message across.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about balance. Is it always about perfect symmetry?
Well, balance is about visual weight of the different elements and how they interact. And, asymmetry, if it's done right, can be just as effective as symmetry. It's about creating a composition that just feels stable,
Right.
harmonious.
Gotcha. Now, what about contrast? How does that actually work in design?
Contrast. It's all about difference.
Okay.
To highlight what's important, create visual interest. Think about like a website, white background, black text.
Yeah.
That high contrast makes the text really easy to read. If there's not enough, the design can feel kind of flat.
Right.
And you lose the message.
It's kind of like trying to read in dim lighting, right? Your eyes have to work harder.
Exactly. Okay, let's move on to repetition and pattern. Repetition makes things consistent,
Okay.
creates unity. Pattern adds visual interest, makes the design more engaging.
Right.
They work together to create, a cohesive experience.
So you're saying these principles work together to kind of create this strong foundation for a design.
That's a great way to put it. It's like constructing a building. You need all the right elements.
Right, in the right places.
Yes. Now, speaking of flow, rhythm, and movement, those are important too.
Okay.
They guide the viewer's eye, creating direction and ensuring that the message gets across effectively.
So you don't just throw things on a page.
No, not at all. You have to think about how you're guiding the viewer's gaze.
Right.
And then there's emphasis.
Okay.
You can use elements like size or color, contrast, to draw attention to specific areas.
Gotcha. So you're highlighting the important information.
Right.
Okay, so I think I'm starting to see how all these principles work together. What about proportion and harmony? Are those part of it too?
You got proportion. It's all about balance between the elements.
Okay.
And then harmony is about, making sure everything works together nicely.
Creating a unified whole.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And don't forget variety. Variety adds visual interest, keeps things from becoming, boring. It's like adding spices to a dish. Right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
To make it more flavorful.
All right, so we've covered history, we've covered the basic principles.
Right.
Now, onto something that can really make or break a design. Color.
Ah, yes, color theory. It's a fascinating field.
It is.
It delves into the science and art of using color effectively. Color's more than just, something you see. It evokes emotions, influences how we understand information.
I've always been curious about the color wheel. Can you break that down for us?
Of course. The color wheel. It's a visual representation of how colors relate. It all starts with primary colors.
Okay,
Red, yellow, blue.
gotcha.
Those are the foundation. All other colors are created from those.
So like they're like the parents of all the colors.
Exactly. Mix two primaries, you get secondary colors.
Yeah.
Orange, green, violet. then mix a primary and a secondary, and you get tertiary colors,
Okay,
like blue-green.
gotcha. So it's like a family tree of colors.
Yes.
How do you actually use this in design?
Well, the wheel helps you understand relationships, create palettes that work well together. For example, complementary colors. Those are opposite each other on the wheel,
Okay.
and they create a strong contrast.
Like red and green at Christmas.
Exactly.
Oh, I get
A
it.
classic example. Now, another concept, warm versus cool colors.
Yeah.
Warm colors like reds, oranges, yellows, they tend to feel energetic, stimulating.
Uh-huh.
Cool colors like blues, greens, violets, those are more calming, soothing.
So you'd use warm colors for something bold and attention-grabbing, and cool colors for something more relaxed.
Precisely. Choosing the right palette, it depends on, your message, the mood you're going for.
Now, I've heard about RGB and CMYK. What are those?
Okay, so RGB and CMYK, those are color models.
Okay.
They determine how the colors display. RGB, that's red, green, blue. That's for digital displays, computers, smartphones.
Okay, RGB for screens.
Right. CMYK, that's cyan, magenta, yellow, key black. That's for printing.
So CMYK is for print. Why is there a difference?
Well, the difference is how the colors are created. RGB is additive, meaning colors are made by adding light. CMYK is subtractive. Colors are made by taking away light from a white surface.
So when you're designing something for print, you have to think about how it'll look on paper.
Exactly, you got it. It's important to understand that to avoid any surprises when you go from digital to print.
This is so interesting. I feel like I'm seeing color in a whole new light.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
We've really just scratched the surface of color theory. There's a lot more to explore. Hue, saturation, value, color harmonies.
Well, I definitely want to dive deeper into color, but maybe next time.
Sounds good.
Let's move on to another element of design. Typography.
Typography,
Hmm.
the art and science of arranging type.
Yes.
It brings words to life visually.
I've always loved beautiful typography, but I've never really understood it. What goes into it? It seems like it's more than just choosing a font.
You're right. It involves a deep understanding of typefaces, their history, anatomy, how to use them well, to make things readable and have a visual impact.
So where do we even start with typography? It seems like a huge subject.
Well, let's start with a little history. Believe it or not, typography can be traced back to ancient Roman inscriptions.
Really? That far back?
Yes. Those inscriptions gave us serifs, those little decorative strokes
Oh, yeah.
at the ends of letters.
Right.
And they came from the way chisels were used to carve letters into stone.
It's amazing how techniques from way back then still influence design today.
Absolutely. And of course, the invention of the Gutenberg press,
Mhm.
15th century, that was huge.
Right.
Led to the first typeface, black letter, and, revolutionized how information was spread.
I can only imagine how groundbreaking that was. So from ancient Rome to the Gutenberg press, typography's come a long way. But how do we understand all the different typefaces? There are so many.
That's where classification comes in. It helps us categorize them
Yeah.
based on characteristics they share and makes it easier to choose the right one for a project.
Makes sense. What are some of the main classifications?
Well, one of the most basic is serif versus sans serif. Serif typefaces, like Times New Roman or Georgia, those have those small decorative strokes. Sans serif, like Arial or Helvetica, don't have them. Gives them a clean and modern look.
So serif is more traditional, sans serif is more contemporary.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
And there are subcategories within those, too, like old style, transitional, and modern serifs, each with their own unique look. Then there are script typefaces, which mimic handwriting, and display typefaces, which are, well, more decorative, used for, like, headlines or short text.
Wow, so many options. How do you even choose which one to use for a design?
Well, choosing the right typeface is super important for readability, visual impact, and conveying the right tone and style. Factors to consider include the X height.
The X height.
Yeah, it's the height of the lowercase letters,
Yeah.
specifically the lowercase x. It's important for readability because a larger X height makes a typeface easier to read at small sizes.
Oh, okay. So a typeface with a small X height, that might not be the best choice for a lot of text.
Exactly. Now, besides choosing the right typeface, there are details like leading, tracking, kerning, alignment. These affect the spacing of text and influence readability and how it looks overall.
Leading and tracking, those sound kind of technical.
Yeah, leading's the space between lines.
Okay.
Proper leading makes the text comfortable to read. Tracking adjusts the spacing between letters.
Okay.
It can improve readability or create a specific look.
So leading is vertical spacing and tracking is horizontal.
You got it. And then there's kerning. That's adjusting the space between specific pairs of letters. It's
Yeah.
often used for like headlines or logos.
Yeah.
Makes the text look more balanced.
It seems like typography involves a lot of attention to detail. It's not just about throwing some text on a page.
You're absolutely right. Typography is a craft,
Yeah.
requires technical knowledge and artistic sensibility.
Yeah.
Done well, it elevates the whole design.
This has been a really eye-opening look at typography. I'm starting to see how powerful it can be.
I'm glad to hear that. We've only just scratched the surface. There's so much more to explore, like the history of specific typefaces, the details of type anatomy, and how digital technologies impacting typography.
It's fascinating.
But for now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about different applications of graphic design.
Okay, let's see how all this comes together in the real world.
Let's start with print design. It covers a wide range of stuff, from posters and brochures to books and magazines.
Okay.
Yeah.
Print design's a great place to start because we interact with it every day, whether it's a magazine cover or a product package.
You're right. Print design has this tangible, physical presence. It can really appreciate the details. And it's about creating designs that are both visually appealing and functional.
Right. Okay, so let's get into some examples. What makes a poster design successful?
A successful poster, it grabs your attention, conveys a message quickly. Think about movie posters, concert announcements. They need to stand out, make you want to know more.
So there's strategy involved, not just making it pretty.
Absolutely. You need a clear hierarchy, bold typography, and strong imagery.
Got it. Makes sense. Now, what about book design? There's a lot more to consider there with all the text and everything.
Book design is multifaceted.
Okay.
It's about creating an experience that's both visually appealing and easy to read. Choosing the right typeface for the body text is crucial,
Right.
as is considering things like line length, leading,
Yeah.
margins. Make sure it's readable.
Like you're creating this little world for the reader to get lost in.
Exactly. And then you have the cover design. That's the first impression. It needs to be eye-catching, give a hint of the story, and reflect the genre and target audience.
Okay, one more for print design. Magazines. What makes a magazine design stand out?
Magazine design. It's a mix of visual storytelling and information design. You have to balance captivating imagery, engaging typography, and a clear structure so people can easily navigate.
I love how magazines can be so visually diverse. Different layouts, photography, typography.
That's part of what makes them engaging. They're competing for attention, on the newsstands, so they have to push boundaries, be creative, while staying true to the brand.
Okay, that was great. Overview of print design. Now let's dive into the digital world. Digital product design.
All right. Digital product design is all about creating great experiences for users
Okay.
of websites, apps, all sorts of digital platforms.
Yeah.
It's a really exciting field that's constantly evolving.
I've heard about UI and UX. What do those terms mean exactly?
Yeah, UI is user interface.
Okay.
It's all the visual elements, buttons, icons, menus, typography that a user actually interacts with. UX, that's user experience. It's more about how it feels.
So UI is how it looks and UX is how it feels.
Exactly.
God.
And both are equally important. A beautiful interface is useless if it's confusing, and a perfectly functional app can still be annoying if it looks bad.
So it's about finding that balance between form and function.
Exactly. And that's where digital product designers come in. They bridge the gap
Okay.
between design and technology.
Now, how is digital design different from graphic design?
Well, digital design's broader.
Okay.
It includes things like web design, motion graphics, even social media graphics. It shares a lot with graphic design, but it often involves motion,
Okay.
interactivity, user experience.
So it's like graphic design, but with a digital twist.
Exactly. Think about like a website with animations
Yeah.
or a social media post with an interactive poll
Gotcha.
that goes beyond static graphics.
Speaking of branding, let's talk about brand design. What makes a brand visually memorable?
Brand design's all about creating a visual identity
Yeah.
that communicates personality, values, messages. It's about crafting a consistent look across everything: logos, websites, even packaging, marketing.
So it's like giving a brand a face and a voice.
Exactly. A strong brand identity helps it stand out from the competition and connect with people.
So it's not just slapping a logo on everything.
Right. It's a whole process. It might involve researching the audience, defining core values, developing a visual language, and creating brand guidelines.
Brand guidelines. What are those?
Brand guidelines, they're like a rule book
Okay.
for how a brand should look and feel.
Okay.
They might cover logo usage, color palettes, typography, imagery, even tone of voice. It's all about consistency across everything.
Got it. So we've covered print design, digital product design, and brand design. Is that everything?
Well, we should also talk about how technology has changed the game for graphic design. It's been a revolution.
Yeah. Okay. So how has technology changed things?
In so many ways. First of all, it's made design more accessible. With software and online resources, anyone with a computer can try it.
So it's not just for people with expensive art degrees.
Right. Technology has also made it easier to work together. Cloud-based tools, teams can work from anywhere.
No more emailing huge files back and forth.
Well, not necessarily.
Yeah.
But it definitely makes it easier to collaborate. And then there's social media. It's a whole new way for designers to show their work, connect with clients, stay on top of trends.
It's like this constant stream of inspiration and opportunity.
Indeed. And then there's AI. AI-powered tools can automate tasks, generate ideas, even create whole designs.
Whoa, hold on. Is AI going to replace graphic designers?
That's a good question. And a lot of people are wondering, well, AI can do a lot. Like I said, automate, generate. I don't think it will ever replace human creativity,
So it's more about AI and designers working together.
Yeah, exactly. It's a tool.
Right.
It can handle the repetitive tasks and free up designers to focus on, the creative aspects of the work.
I like that. So speaking of the design process, how does a typical project actually work? How does it all unfold?
Well, it usually starts with a brief from the client,
Okay.
outlining the goals, target audience, any requirements.
Gotcha.
Then comes brainstorming. That's where designers gather inspiration, explore ideas, start sketching.
So it's like a detective gathering clues.
I like that analogy. Once a few solid concepts are developed, you present them to the client
Right.
with their feedback. And this is where good communication is essential.
Right. So it's not just about presenting a finished design. It's a conversation
Right.
with the client.
Exactly. You explain your choices, be open to feedback, revisions.
That makes sense. Now, what about the tools that designers use? What software and things?
Well, the Adobe Creative Suite is considered the industry standard.
Uh-huh.
Programs like Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, After Effects.
I've heard of those, but they seem pretty advanced. Are there any alternatives maybe for people just starting out?
Sure, there's some great alternatives,
Okay.
like Affinity Designer, Sketch, Figma.
Okay.
They offer similar stuff at a better price.
What about free resources for things like fonts and images?
For fonts, DeFont and Google Fonts are great.
Okay.
For color palettes, try Coolers and Happy Hues.
And what if you need more than that? Illustrations, templates, things like that.
Envato Elements is a good option. It's subscription-based.
Right.
And they have tons of high-quality stuff. Images, graphics, even music and sound effects.
There's no excuse for not having good design resources.
Exactly. You can find everything you need to create awesome designs without going broke.
That's great. Okay, we've covered a lot. From, the history of graphic design to the digital tools. It's amazing.
Yeah.
We've really explored the world of visual communication.
It's a fascinating world.
It is.
And there's always more to discover. Welcome back. Last time, we were talking about technology and graphic design and how it's really changed things.
Yeah, it's amazing how much it's evolved. So we've talked about how graphic design has changed and all the different ways it's used, both print and digital. But I'm curious, what's it actually like to design something? Where do you even begin?
That's a great question. It all starts with the design brief.
Okay.
It's basically a roadmap from the client, outlining the project goals, who they're targeting, any specific things they need.
So it's like a mission statement for the designer.
Exactly. The brief's really important. It guides all the decisions the designer makes and makes sure the final product is what the client wants.
Makes sense. So you've got the brief. What's next?
Then comes the brainstorming. This is where the fun starts.
Okay.
Designers get inspiration, think of different ideas, and start sketching things out.
So this is where all the mood boards and color palettes come in.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about experimenting, trying things out, seeing what works visually.
It sounds fun, but it can't all be just playing around, right?
You're right. There's definitely structure to the process. Once you've got some solid concepts, you present them to the client
Okay.
for feedback. This part is so important because communication is key.
So it's not about just showing them a finished design. You're working with them.
Right, it's a back and forth.
Yeah. Yeah.
You explain your choices to the client, why you did things a certain way, and you're open to their feedback.
Right, because they might have a different vision for the project.
Exactly. And sometimes that feedback can be tough to hear, especially if you have a strong idea of where you want to go with it.
So how do you deal with that?
It's a balance.
Mm.
You have to stay true to your design principles, but also make sure you're giving the client what they need.
It's like this dance between your creativity and what the client wants.
That's a great way to put it. So once you get that feedback, you refine the design, finalize everything, and get it ready to deliver.
So all the fine-tuning happens there,
Yeah.
making sure everything is perfect and ready to go.
Exactly. And, you know, the exact steps can change depending on the project,
Right.
the client, how the designer likes to work.
So what about the actual tools graphic designers use?
Well, a lot of designers use the Adobe Creative Suite. It's pretty much the industry standard.
Okay.
It's got Photoshop for images, Illustrator for vector graphics, InDesign for layout, and After Effects for motion graphics.
Those sound pretty advanced. What if you're like just starting out or on a budget?
There are some really good alternatives.
Okay.
Affinity Designer, Sketch, Figma, those are all great and a
Right.
little more affordable.
And are there free resources out there?
Oh, definitely. For free fonts, you can try Dayfont or Google Fonts.
Okay.
For color palettes, there's Coolers and Happy Hues.
Those are helpful. And what about if you need other stuff like illustrations or templates?
Envato Elements is a great choice. It's a subscription service. They have so many high-quality assets, images, graphics, even music and sound effects.
Wow. So really, there's no excuse for not having good resources no matter what.
Right. You can find what you need to create great designs without spending a ton of money.
That's really encouraging. Okay, so we talked about the process, we talked about the tools. Now I'm curious about technology and how that's impacting the field. It seems like it's constantly changing.
It is a really exciting time to be a designer. One of the best things about technology is that it's made design accessible to anyone.
That's true. It's not just for like a select few anymore, but are there challenges that come with technology?
Definitely. I think the biggest one is just keeping up with how fast it changes.
Right.
There's always new software, new trends, even new social media platforms popping up. You got to stay on top of things.
So it's like you're always learning.
Pretty much. And then, you also have to manage expectations.
What do you mean?
Well, clients have so much information at their fingertips now, sometimes their expectations aren't realistic.
About the process, you mean?
Yeah, about things like how long it takes, how much it costs.
So communication is really important.
It is. You got to be really clear about your process. Explain things to the client.
Makes sense. And then there's AI. Everyone's talking about it. How do you see AI impacting design? Is it a threat or a tool?
It's an interesting question. I think AI can do amazing things.
Yeah.
Automate tasks, come up with ideas,
Right.
but I don't think it'll ever fully replace human creativity.
So it's not about AI versus designers. It's about them working together.
Exactly. AI is a tool. It can handle the repetitive stuff, so designers have more time to be creative.
I like that. AI taking care of the boring parts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And as AI gets even better, I think we'll see even more uses for it in design.
This has been so eye-opening. I love hearing about how technology is shaping things.
It's definitely an interesting time to be in the creative world.
Yeah.
As we wrap up this part of the deep dive, I think the biggest takeaway is that graphic design, it's really all about communication.
Yeah.
Using visuals to share ideas, tell stories, connect with people.
That's a good point. It's not just about making things look nice. It's about making them meaningful.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so fascinating and fulfilling.
Welcome back for the final part of our graphic design deep dive.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We have. From cave paintings to AI, it's been quite a journey through the world of visual communication.
It really has. So as we wrap things up, let's think about some of the key things we've learned. What are the big takeaways?
Yeah, good idea. I'm ready to connect all the dots, see the bigger picture.
One of those important things to remember is that graphic design, at its heart, it's about communication.
Right.
Using visual elements, not just randomly, but with purpose to get a message across, tell a story, evoke a feeling.
It's not just about making things pretty, although that's part of it. It's about, using design to achieve something, connect with people.
Exactly. And to do that effectively, designers use these core principles.
Right.
Balance, contrast, repetition, hierarchy, all those things we talked about. They help ensure that designs are both visually appealing and easy to understand.
Yeah, they're like the foundation of good design.
That's a good way to put it. Another thing to keep in mind is that graphic design, it never stands still. It's always evolving.
Right. Always changing.
Technology changes.
Yeah.
Cultural trends come and go. All of that influences how we design and how people see and understand visuals.
So designers have to keep learning, keep up with things.
Exactly. You got to be curious, try new tools, be open to new ways of doing things.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's technology itself, which has had a massive impact on graphic design.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about Adobe Creative Suite, but also online tools like Canva and Figma. It seems like anyone can be a designer now.
It really is amazing. You don't need to go to art school or have expensive equipment. There are so many ways for people to express their creativity now.
And AI. We talked about that too. That's a whole other level. I mean, what are your final thoughts on that?
Well, AI is definitely changing things.
Yeah.
And it'll keep changing things. But I don't think it's going to replace designers altogether.
Right. It's more of a tool.
Yeah, a tool that can help designers work better and faster, freeing them up to focus on, the higher level thinking, the creative problem solving.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's your biggest piece of advice for someone who's interested in graphic design?
I would say just pay attention. Look around you. Graphic design is everywhere. Logos, websites, packaging, advertising. Start noticing the choices that designers have made.
Right.
Think about why they made those choices. What message are they trying to convey? How does it make you feel?
Yeah, that's a good point. We can learn so much just by observing.
Exactly. And if this deep dive has, sparked your interest, just keep exploring. Try things out. There's a whole world of design out there waiting for you.
This has been such a great deep dive. I've learned so much.
Me too.
I feel like I have a much better understanding of what graphic design is all about.
And who knows, maybe we'll inspire some future designers along the way.
I hope so. That would be amazing.
Well, thanks for joining us on this journey. And keep those creative sparks flying.
Absolutely. And to our listeners, thanks for tuning in to this deep dive into graphic design.